I didn't expect to see her again. Not here, not in this kind of light. Fluorescent, unkind, humming like the world was holding its breath. The kind of light that made everything look more real than it should. It was just after 7. The garage was quiet except for the ticking of a cooling engine and the faint crackle of an old radio. I was finishing the paperwork for a late repair when I saw her reflection in the office window before I actually saw her. Clara. She wasn't supposed to walk into my evenings anymore. She pushed the door open like someone used to being noticed. Mid-40s, still carrying that calm, practiced confidence that made everyone else's movements look uncoordinated. Her hair was tied loosely, streaked with gray that didn't look like defeat. It looked earned. "I didn't think you worked this late," she said, leaning slightly against the counter, her voice low, steady. "I don't usually," I answered, pretending to keep typing. "Just catching up." She smiled like she knew that wasn't true. It had been almost a month since she brought her best friend's car in for a tune-up. That's how it started. The best friend, a younger woman, was talkative, a little wild, the type who filled silence with stories that didn't ask for answers. But Clara was different. She had a way of standing still that made everyone else seem restless. Now, seeing her again, I felt the same quiet pressure in my chest I did that first afternoon, like I was in a room that had suddenly gone too small. "I was nearby," she said, glancing toward the window where rain began to slide down the glass. "Saw the light on." She said it like an excuse. I nodded, unsure what to do with my hands. "It's been a while." She gave a small nod, eyes moving over the tools scattered across the desk. "Still overworking yourself?" I almost laughed. "That obvious? It's written all over your face." That's when her best friend appeared in the doorway, shaking out an umbrella. Her laughter filled the space, easy and reckless. She walked over, dropped her bag on the counter, and said something about how the night was too damn long already. Before I could answer, she reached out, without warning, and ran her fingers through my hair. "Forget her tonight," she teased, glancing at Clara like she was sharing a private joke. The touch wasn't seductive, not really. It was light, almost playful, but it froze the room. I felt Clara's gaze, sharp and unreadable. For a second, nobody said anything. The only sound was the steady patter of rain outside. I stepped back, trying to smile it off. "Guess I don't get to pick sides here." Her friend laughed again, but Clara didn't. Her jaw tightened, eyes flickering toward the door. A minute later, she said they should go, and I didn't argue. She thanked me for staying open late, even though I hadn't done anything for her. Her friend kept talking, but Clara was quiet as she turned to leave. Her coat brushed against the counter, close enough that I caught the faint scent of rain and her perfume, something soft, like sandalwood. When the door shut behind them, the silence in the shop felt heavier than before. I told myself it was just another night, another conversation that didn't mean anything. But later, lying in bed, I kept replaying that moment, the look she gave me when her friend said those words. Not angry, not jealous, just something that made my chest ache, like she wanted to say something but couldn't. And I knew, even then, I wouldn't forget her, not tonight, not anytime soon. I told myself it would just be a normal morning. But when I walked into the shop that Tuesday, she was already there, leaning against the side of her best friend's dented hatchback, hair damp from the early rain. The gray sky made the parking lot look like it had been washed in quiet. She wasn't looking at me. She was staring at a coffee cup like it had answers. "Morning," I said, trying to sound casual. She lifted her head slowly. "Hey, sorry to just show up like this." Her car's making that sound again. I crouched down, popped the hood, and pretended that checking an engine required my full attention. But the truth was, I kept stealing glances at her hands, the way her fingers gripped the cup like she didn't trust them to be still. She had the kind of hands that had seen a lot, the kind that didn't fidget unless something inside was unraveling. "She could have brought it in herself," I said, half a smile tugging at the corner of my mouth. "She's still asleep," Clara replied. "She doesn't do mornings." I let the engine noise fill the space between us. There was something about early hours, about quiet, where everything people don't say feels louder. When I stood back up, I found her watching me, not in the way people stare when they want something, but like she was weighing whether she should be here at all. Her eyes softened, then tightened, like she almost let something slip and caught it just in time. "You look tired," I said. I hadn't planned to. She blinked, startled, not at the words, but at being seen. "I haven't been sleeping much." She didn't offer a reason. I didn't ask, but I noticed the faint smudge beneath her eyes, the way her voice dipped low like the weight of the night still clung to it. "Rough week." She gave a soft laugh, almost soundless. You could say that. It wasn't the kind of laugh people give when something's funny. It was the kind that slips out when they've run out of ways to hold it in. I wiped my hands on a rag and leaned against the car beside her, careful not to stand too close. She didn't step back either. Rain began to fall again, soft, steady. Her hair caught the light from the shop sign, a few strands sticking to her cheek. She didn't brush them away. For a second, I almost did. She took a slow breath, like the air itself was something heavy. "I shouldn't even be here," she murmured. But she didn't move. I could hear the soft hiss of the rain on the pavement, the steady tick of the engine cooling. Everything in me knew I should have said something safe, something to close the distance she was clearly trying to keep. But instead, I just said quietly, "I'm glad you are." She didn't answer, just looked at me, eyes flickering with something fragile and dangerous all at once. The rain grew louder, but neither of us stepped away. It was supposed to be a quick drop-off, just her stopping by to pick up her friend's car after hours. But by the time she arrived, the rain had turned heavy again, sharp, insistent, pounding against the tin roof of the garage. The sound filled every corner of the place, so thick it made conversation feel like a secret. "Looks worse than it did this morning," I said, glancing outside. She smiled faintly. "You always narrate the weather?" "Only when it's easier than talking about other things." That made her pause, just long enough for her eyes to meet mine. The kind of glance that holds a question but never asks it. I offered her a seat on the stool near the workbench while I closed out the paperwork. She hesitated, then sat. The air smelled of wet pavement and oil, a strange mix that felt almost warm. "I used to love storms," she said after a while. "When I was a kid, I'd sit by the window and pretend the thunder was applause." "That's oddly optimistic." She smiled again, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Yeah, I'm not that kid anymore." I didn't know what to say, so I didn't. I just kept pretending to read the repair sheet, even though I hadn't turned the page in 2 minutes. When the lightning flashed, she flinched, just slightly, and I noticed her hand resting on the counter, fingers trembling before she folded them into a fist. "You okay?" "Fine," she said too quickly. Then, quieter, "It's just been a long day." Something in her voice cracked on that last word. I don't think she meant for it to. Without thinking, I reached across the counter and set my hand near hers. Not touching, just close enough that the space between our fingers felt charged. She looked down at it, and the smallest exhale left her lips. Neither of us moved. The rain softened, slowing to a whisper. Then her phone buzzed. She jumped slightly, grabbing it before the second vibration. I watched her expression shift, calm slipping into something heavier. She didn't answer, but the name lighting up the screen made her shoulders tense. "Everything okay?" I asked. She locked the phone and set it face down. "Yeah, just complicated." The air changed. The moment that had been open between us folded in on itself, like something delicate shutting down. "I should go," she said, standing, smoothing her coat like armor. "Wait," I said, before I could stop myself. She turned. For a second, I thought I might tell her the truth, that she'd been in my head since that night, that I kept hearing the sound of her laugh in the quiet. But the words stayed behind my teeth. Instead, I just handed her the keys. "Take care of yourself, all right?" Her fingers brushed mine when she took them. A tiny, unintentional touch, but enough to leave a tremor in its wake. "I'll try," she whispered. And then she was gone, leaving the smell of rain, the echo of thunder, and a space that felt suddenly too empty. Then she walked into the shop again, same faint perfume, same quiet gravity that made the air shift without warning. It was late, close to closing. The kind of hour when words feel heavier, when people say things they shouldn't. "I shouldn't have come," she said, standing by the door, but not stepping inside yet. "I figured you might," I replied. You left your umbrella here last time. She smiled, but it faded fast. You knew I'd come back for it. Yeah. Silence. The kind that isn't awkward, just honest. She finally came closer, her heels clicking against the concrete. I could hear the small sound of her breathing, steady, deliberate. Everything okay? I asked, even though I already knew it wasn't. She exhaled through her nose, almost laughing at herself. You always ask that. Why do you do that? Because you never tell me the truth. That stopped her. For a long time, she just looked at me. The lights buzzed above us. A wrench rolled off a table somewhere in the back. Outside, the world kept raining. I don't know what this is, she finally said. Her voice was quiet, almost level. I come here, and for an hour it feels like I can breathe again. Then I leave, and I hate myself for it. I swallowed hard. It's not, she cut me off. Don't say it isn't wrong. You're too young to lie that well. I didn't move. Didn't argue. There was a tremor in her words that felt more real than anything she'd said before. I'm not trying to, I started. I know, she said softer. That's the problem. You're not trying. You just are. You look at me like you're not supposed to, and I pretend not to notice. Her hand brushed the edge of the counter. I could see the faint shimmer of moisture in her eyes, though she didn't blink it away. I wanted to say something clean, safe, logical, but the words wouldn't come. You ever feel like you've already crossed a line? She murmured. But no one else knows it yet. My voice barely came out. Every time you walk in here. That silence again. Deep, unfiltered. Her lips parted like she wanted to say something back, but then her phone rang. That same name. The one that always made her shoulders tense. She didn't answer. Just turned the screen face down on the counter and pressed her palms flat against it. When she looked up again, her voice broke for the first time. I don't know what I'm doing anymore. I stepped closer, close enough that I could see the shimmer of rain still clinging to her hair. You don't have to know, I whispered. You're allowed to not know. She closed her eyes, just once, slowly, as if the effort hurt. Then she said, barely audible, you shouldn't make it sound that easy. And that was the moment I realized we weren't pretending anymore. The next few days, the shop felt emptier than usual. Every sound, the clank of tools, the hum of the lights, seemed to echo louder in her absence. Then, one evening, as I was closing up, I saw her car parked across the street. She didn't come inside right away. She just sat there, headlights off, like she was deciding whether to leave or to do something she'd regret. When she finally stepped out, she wasn't wearing her usual calm. Her coat was half-buttoned, her hair loose, and her eyes looked tired in a way I hadn't seen before. I need to pick something up, she said, though there was nothing here that belonged to her anymore. She stood in the middle of the shop, looking at the floor, at the walls, at everything but me. I didn't ask what she was really here for. I just waited. After a long silence, she reached into her bag and pulled out an old photograph. Faded, creased at the edges. She handed it to me. It was her, younger, maybe 25, standing beside a man by the same kind of car I'd been working on last month. Same model, same color. The man's arm was around her shoulders. Both of them were laughing. He died, she said, her voice small and steady, as if she'd said it too many times before. Car accident. 20 years ago this summer. I stared at the photo. The background looked like it could have been this very town. I didn't know, I said quietly. She nodded. Most people don't. I don't talk about it anymore. But the first day I came here, the sound your tools made, the smell of oil and rain, it all felt like that day again. She hesitated, eyes flicking up to mine. And you look like him. For a second, I forgot how to breathe. I'm sorry, I managed. I didn't mean to. Don't, she interrupted, shaking her head. You didn't do anything wrong. It's just that sometimes I look at you, and it's like time folds over itself. Like I'm being reminded of something I was supposed to forget. The photograph trembled slightly in her hand. She didn't seem to notice. I kept thinking it was just nostalgia, she continued. But it's not. It's confusing. You make me feel things I thought were gone. And I don't know if that's fair, to you, or to him. I wanted to tell her it didn't matter, that she didn't have to carry the past like a shadow. But the words wouldn't form. They felt too small for the space between us. So instead, I took the photo and set it gently on the counter. Then don't decide tonight, I said softly. Just let it be confusing. She looked up, eyes wet but calm. And then, without meaning to, she smiled. A small, trembling thing that looked like forgiveness. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere distant, and the shop lights flickered once before steadying again. She reached for the photo, fingers brushing mine, and whispered, "You even sound like him." That's when I realized I hadn't just stepped into her present. I'd stepped into her past, and neither of us knew how to find the way out. I told myself it was better that way, that maybe what she needed was distance from me, from the ghost I'd accidentally woken. But the truth was, every sound in the shop reminded me of her. Every shift of light across the hood of a car, every faint hum of rain against the window. When she finally walked in again, she didn't bring the photograph. She didn't bring excuses, either. Just quiet. "I thought you wouldn't come back," I said. "I almost didn't," she replied. "But avoiding things never really made them disappear, did it?" She sat on the stool near the workbench, same spot as always. And for the first time, she didn't look like she was carrying something fragile. She looked real, human in her tiredness, her uncertainty. "You look like you haven't slept," she said softly. "Neither have you." That made her laugh, a faint, broken sound that felt like a release. She brushed a loose strand of hair behind her ear, the smallest tremor in her hand betraying her calm. "I keep trying to figure out what this is," she said. "What we're doing. Whether it's grief or guilt, or—" She stopped herself. "Maybe it doesn't need a name," I said. She looked up at me then, not like she was trying to remember someone else. Just me. The moment held, steady, fragile, like a candle flame that refused to go out. "I'm not supposed to need anyone," she whispered. "Yeah," I said. "Me neither." For a long time, neither of us moved. The world outside was gray and wet, but inside the air felt still, suspended. When I finally stepped closer, she didn't flinch. She just let out a slow breath, like she'd been holding it for years. "I keep waiting for this to make sense," she said, voice shaking. "It won't," I replied. "But that doesn't make it wrong." Her eyes closed then, and when they opened again, the guard she'd always worn was gone. I saw everything she'd tried to hide, the fatigue, the ache, the need to be understood without explanation. And for the first time, I didn't reach out to comfort her. I just stood there, close enough that our hands brushed, skin to skin, accidental but deliberate all the same. She turned her palm upward, her fingers finding mine with the quietest kind of courage. No words, no promises, just the simple, heavy truth of presence. The rain outside slowed, softening into a faint rhythm against the window. "You remind me of who I used to be," she said. "And you remind me who I want to be," I answered. Neither of us smiled. We just stayed there, two people who had finally stopped pretending not to care. No confessions, no endings, just silence that said everything we couldn't. And when she finally leaned her forehead gently against mine, it wasn't about wanting. It was about finally letting go of everything that had kept us apart. The clock ticked once. The rain stopped. The rain still comes and goes, the same way it always has, but the air feels different somehow. Lighter, like the world took a slow breath it didn't realize it was holding. She doesn't come to the shop as often anymore. Sometimes she'll text about her friend's car or drop off coffee if she's nearby, always leaving it on the counter with a note, "Don't stay late." There's no subtext in it anymore, no tension, no hiding, just something soft, familiar. I still think about that night, the quiet between us, the way her hand found mine without meaning to. I think that was the moment everything stopped being about guilt or confusion. It became something else, something gentler. I used to think love was about clarity, about knowing what you wanted and chasing it until you caught it. But she taught me it's not always like that. Sometimes love is just the act of being present when someone finally stops running. She never said she loved me, and I never said it back. Maybe we didn't have to. What we had existed in the spaces between words, in the shared silences, the small kindnesses, the understanding that not everything has to be claimed to be real. The truth is, I'm not sure what we became. We never gave it a name. Maybe we were a pause in each other's lives, a quiet place where two people, different in every way, found something familiar in the ache. Sometimes she still stops by when it rains. She'll lean against the counter, tell me about a new book she's reading, or how her best friend still drives like she's trying to outrun something invisible. I'll listen, nod, and smile. Not because I'm waiting for more, but because I already got what I needed. Understanding. She once told me grief doesn't vanish. It just changes its shape. I think she was right. Because now, when I see her smile, I don't see the weight she used to carry. I see the woman she's finally allowed herself to become. And when she looks at me, I think she sees the man who stopped mistaking longing for loss. Love didn't fix either of us. It just reminded us that broken things can still be beautiful. That sometimes the right people don't stay forever. They just pass through at the exact moment you need to feel seen again. So yeah, maybe nothing happened in the way people expect stories to end. But every time it rains, I still look at the door, and I swear, I can feel the quiet warmth of that night when silence said everything. And that's enough. Sparkles, if this story made you feel something, let me know in the comments. Would you want more stories like this?